Every year when the summer season approaches, we must fight against the only enemy that all of us have in common: wildfires. These can be controlled in a few hours, or they can get out of control to extreme levels and end up burning territories the size of medium-sized countries, as in the case of the fires in Australia in 2019. Nowadays, we have all kinds of means to fight and control them, but in this channel we are going to make focus obviously on the incredible task that airplanes and aviation are doing to fight fires. Using aircraft to extinguish fires is one of the most useful discoveries in this matter, for several reasons. The first is that it allows us to observe the fire from a completely different angle. In addition, it allows water to be discharged in areas that are not safe or feasible for ground operators on foot, either because the fire is very close or because the terrain is especially difficult. There are different types of aircraft prepared for this task, from helicopters that can carry water to enormous Boeing 747 that was capable of carrying 74,000 liters of water, a quantity that is difficult to imagine. But in this video we are going to talk about the Canadair CL-215 and its variants, one of the aircraft most used by countries all over the world for firefighting missions. Because it is a seaplane, it has the capability of loading water in motion. It is not necessary to land at an airport to reload. This allows it to have a much higher work rate than any other aircraft on the sector. This video is our small tribute to those who risk their lives to keep fires out. At our country, Spain, those in charge of this task are the Air Force 43 Group, which obviously operate the Canadair CL-215 and the Canadair CL-415, both very similar. Amphibious aircraft or seaplanes can carry land or water operations. Initially, this aircraft was powered by two piston engines that were later changed by two turboprops for better performance. The lower part of the fuselage is similar to that of a ship, to allow it to land and operate in lakes and seas. The high wing is designed to give the greatest space between the water and the propellers. The water ingestion system works with two inlets at the fuselage belly that, by inertia and due to the speed of the aircraft on water, it makes the water enter this system, and it is stored in water tanks inside the fuselage. Therefore, it is necessary for the aircraft to have a certain speed to store water. For example, in a case of a water takeoff, in which a water load is needed, the aircraft would accelerate, and when speed is considerable, the water intakes would be lowered and the plane would load its water tanks. If you notice, the internal tanks where the water is stored are located in the central part of the aircraft. This is always for stability reasons. In 2013, a Boeing 747 freighter was preparing to take off from the Bagram military base, Afghanistan, when suddenly this happened. Studies on the cause of the accident indicated that the cargo transported, in this case military vehicles, were not properly fixed. When the aircraft took off, the cargo moved rearward, causing a serious stability problem. So, basically, the center of gravity moved towards the rear, exceeding the limits considerable safe for that aircraft. In addition, this caused several hydraulic systems to be damaged due to internal impact, which also made it impossible for the pilots to recover. For this reason is that the water tanks on the Canadair are around the center of gravity, because when in a few seconds water is dropped and the weight decreases abruptly, the center of gravity more or less remains at the same position, but this decreasing weight causes an upward acceleration in the aircraft. Think of it as if you have a stabilized aircraft flying straight and level with 100 kilograms of weight, and suddenly you release 25 kilograms. The weight of the aircraft decreases, breaking the previous balance.
Al soltar el agua, tú cuando pulsas el botón de descarga, lo que notas es un cabeceo hacia arriba, notas un empujón muy fuerte, un tiro muy fuerte del avión hacia arriba. Y nada, lo corriges tú manualmente. Al final, con la práctica, pues descargas y el avión no se mueve, pero es porque tú compensas con fuerza, de hecho, al final de forma inconsciente.
Lo bueno es que estamos acostumbrados a hacer las descargas y nos esperamos ese tirón. Entonces,
ya.
En el momento en el que ya tienes la mano sobre los mandos, pulsas el botón y ya inconscientemente, como dice él, empujas un poco los mandos hacia abajo para compensar un poco el cabeceo, que aún así lo notas.
Another crucial moment from the stability point of view is of course the opposite situation, the water ingestion. If you look closely, the aircraft always do it with a certain angle of attack, in such a way that the nose is always separated from the water. This is due the nose gear compartment is not sealed hermetically, so if water gets inside, it will generate a sharp dive of the nose downwards, something similar to what can be seen in this video. In just 12 seconds, about 6,000 liters of water are collected, and you already know that the density of water is such that 1 liter is 1 kilogram. Therefore, the aircraft in 12 seconds suddenly weighs 6 tons more, as if you suddenly put onto the plane 5 small cars. So theoretically, as soon as the plane reaches the water, as it continues to move fast, the wings generate lift and make it practically fly. But as it collects more and more and more water, it will increase the weight. So to be able to take off again, you will have to use maximum power to generate again the speed needed to achieve flight with your new increased weight. As you can see, it is impossible for a diver to get sucked into the ingestion system inlets, through which water is caught. I comment on this because I have read more than one person saying that this could happen. Doing the water loading process at an open sea or at a closed lake is very different. At a lake, you will have very relaxed and calm waters and no significant waves. It could occur that the overall process, landing and water ingestion, is done so gently by the pilot that for him not even knowing that he has the aircraft already in water. However, in the sea, with high waves, it is a much harder and more rough overall process. And in fact, when operating at an open sea, it is much safer to do it near the coast, because the waves are much softer. For that reason, sometimes you can see videos that perhaps, from the point of view of ignorance, can seem made on purpose, because the pilot is reckless, or even to scare people or surprise people, when the only and true reason is operational safety always. As for the time to put out the fire, the most interesting thing is not to drop the water right where the flames are located, since the temperature makes the air evaporate and rise before the water has reached the fire. That is, it would be to lose a water discharge foolishly. This is why generally water is thrown between the flames and the area to which it's expected to advance. That is, the smartest way to put out the fire is not to put it out, it is to prevent it from spreading. Initially, it is normal to try to extinguish with local media forces. For example, in our country, Spain, some regions have helicopters or small aircraft capable of carrying water. But in the case of a big fire, if it seems necessary, the region affected will notify the Air Force 43 group, depending on how uncontrolled the fire is. Or, for example, if there is a population nearby, or it is a protected area such as natural park. Throughout the year, all or almost all the aircraft are parked at the Torrejón Air Base, located at Madrid. However, in the summer season, with the aim of covering the entire Iberian Peninsula when the risk of fire is at its peak, the aircraft are distributed through the different military bases. For example, in this summer of 2021, the BB have taken aircraft to Zaragoza, Pollensa, Málaga, Salamanca, Badajoz, Santiago de Compostela, and one that remains in Madrid. In this way, any fire could be assisted and attacked by any one of the aircraft. For example, imagine a made-up case in which a fire appeared in this area here. A plane would fly from Santiago de Compostela, taking approximately 25 minutes to leave from the moment of the alarm, and taking 45 minutes to fly there. If 43 group has been called, it is because the first attempts to extinguish the fire have failed, but it also means that it's likely that there are firefighters on the ground. Some other small aircraft from the region could also be already working to extinguish the fire, and now also the Air Force Canadair will join them. To coordinate all this operation, another extra aircraft should be observing and making decisions while seeing the fire from above. It can be a helicopter or an airplane. They will take care of knowing the wind in the location, the complex terrain, etc. They will be in charge of organizing where the firefighter planes have to discharge water and also coordinate this with the ground forces. In addition, also, when a discharge is going to be made where there are firefighters on the ground, they would advise them so that they prepare to receive the impact of the water. since there will be 6 tons of water falling at 200 km/h, and as you imagine, if that hits you, it would be very dangerous or even mortal. In conclusion, the ground and air forces would complement each other to block the way to the fire. For example, if the ground firefighters are working in this front over here, the Canadair will launch the water in this other line here. In the event that the plane has to go over the fire, special care must be taken with the turbulence generated by the high temperatures.
Pero básicamente tú cuando te acercas a la descarga llegas incluso a ver remolinos que se forman en el humo, que son de corrientes que hay por el tema de temperatura y tal, y tú ya tienes que ir compensando porque si cuando llegas a la zona igual el avión se te pone, te hace un alabeo fuerte a la izquierda por ejemplo y tú ya tienes que prever eso para compensarlo.
Also keep in mind that the smoke is burned air, therefore it has less oxygen and can adversely affect engines or even worse, stop them.
De hecho ves en los instrumentos y te metes en humo que tienes bajadas de los indicadores del motor porque hay pérdidas de compresor, esta vez una densidad pobre de oxígeno y tal.
Normally, the water discharge is carried out at an altitude of between 16 and 30 meters, although depending on the conditions of each fire, it can be launched from higher for safety reasons. For example, in case the fire spreads through a narrow valley, it may not be safe to the aircraft flying low at that situation, thus unloading the water from higher would be safer. The reality is that in aviation there is always talk that speed and altitude are your life insurance, but the Canadair do not have either of the two. First, because they descend to surface altitude to cut water, for example in lakes, and we think of extensive lakes, but they are surrounded by trees and high mountains. And secondly, because this plane flies very slow because its flying characteristics, but despite all that, it is a splendid aircraft that is designed to be very stable, which means that in the event of any disturbance, the aircraft alone will correct itself and return to its initial position. In fact, they jokingly told us that the more experience you have with the plane, the less you touch the controls. And we could verify all this from experience, because we went to the plane simulator that they have there at the base and they let us fly and try it. We were able to manage and handle the aircraft for a while. When we think of the missions carried out by those responsible for putting out fires, we keep thinking that at an airport you can ask for information on wind speed, maximum wind gust, temperature, etc. But they had to descend to mountain regions without having absolutely non-verified information about this data. Of course, they are taught to guess these values from experience and depending on the movement of water and trees, but for us, simply comparing a takeoff from one of these missions with a takeoff from any other plane at an airport is simply a joke. So for you, the ones that put your lives at risk for the good of the others, thank you.